Welcome to our podcast, Resilient Heroes, where we are dedicated to showcasing the incredible journeys and contributions of women in the field of emergency management. I'm your host, Laura James. Resilient Heroes podcast listeners, I have the pleasure today of introducing you to Sarah Flores. She is an emergency services coordinator with public safety for the city of Malibu in California. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
And I have been introduced to you through a colleague who sung your praises in terms of the initiative that you're taking, how passionate you are about emergency management, and how much work you put in on a daily basis, and really how passionate you are. So I'm really excited to share some of your experience with our listeners today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting and being able to share all this. So thank you.
You're welcome. So let's talk a little bit about how you got into emergency management, what inspired you or pushed you towards this career. And before you say anything, I'm going to say, like all of our guests so far, you didn't start out here. So let's talk about how you got here.
Yeah, so well, I did a little career switch. I originally worked in medical in the healthcare field, and a few years back, I made this switch into emergency management, went back to school. But what inspired me, I think, to go this route was my dad was actually, he worked for a fire department as a firefighter paramedic. And he actually worked in the emergency operations center for years in different incidents. And, he always taught my family, my siblings, all of us, how to be prepared, what to do in the case of an emergency. And I always grew up that way. And so when I went into this field, it was just it was just meant to be. Like
It was natural.
it was natural. It came to me natural. I absolutely love working in this field, and I loved working in healthcare too. But I kind of just I made this switch, and and it was the best decision I've ever made. And it's funny too, because you ask any of my friends or my family about my career, and they will 100% tell you this is definitely what I'm supposed to be doing.
You
So,
found your match.
yes, I definitely did. So, that's how I got here. I did that switch, and my dad definitely was my inspiration to take this route. So,
I love that. I love that there's a family connection for you that sort of, and you you walked around the world as a little person and then grew into an adult, emergency prepared at every step of the way. So that is amazing. Now, you and I talked a little bit about where you were and, a defining moment for you. And we've been talking a lot about recently about, how COVID impacted all of us. And so I know that that is one of the things that helped you shift to know that EM was the way that you were going to go, because you were in healthcare during the largest pandemic that we have seen in our history, really, and the global impacts of that. And then, living in a fairly populated area during that time. You weren't in a tiny community. So
yeah.
talk to me a little bit about that and what it felt like to be on the healthcare side during emergency management, because many of us were in the direct response on the EM side in supporting all of you. So how did that feel? And then how did that help reinforce your switch of careers?
Yeah. So, I've always, wanted to help people. And that's why I went that healthcare side, working in the medical field. And then going into COVID, affected everyone. It changed the way organizations operate. It changed the healthcare field. It changed absolutely everything. A lot of schools and businesses were shut down. And being in healthcare, I definitely got to see that firsthand of what was, happening. And I think it was definitely, um, everyone was worried about it. No one really knew what it was at the time.
Hmm.
And so I made this switch because I want to continue helping people. But going into emergency management, I'm able to do that on a larger scale, and help people there. So I made that switch into emergency management, and working in healthcare during COVID really just um, you know
Was the
reassure.
push you needed?
Mhm. Yeah, it was definitely, and I think like and I'm still helping people. I'm just doing it differently, and I'm helping communities, and with a variety of different disasters that could occur. So that definitely helped, definitely reassure my career switch. But I love where I'm at right now and working in this field. And it's definitely, emergency management's always different. There's something new every day. Um, and so I love working in this field.
So, Sarah, tell me how, once you decided to make a transition, is a very different environment from a healthcare environment into a municipal planning and preparedness environment or an EOC. And, education is probably involved. So tell us how you made that switch.
Yeah, so I was actually in school at the time when I was working in healthcare, and I was getting a degree in emergency management and homeland security.
Ah,
And my degree was something I could take to a hospital if I wanted to move
mm-hmm.
towards that route.
Yep.
But I decided to go towards, working for government. And I was able to get into a fellowship program with a large city out here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got into that, absolutely loved working for local government and working in the EOC and seeing that, that different side of things,
Yes.
whether for an emergency situation or a planned event. And so I got my education in that, and I've just continued it. Emergency management's always changing, and you always have new trainings and new classes, and I've everything that comes up, I always try to take, because it's all new information, So I think furthering my education in this field is always good when going into those emergency situations. So yeah, I do have a bachelor's degree in emergency management and homeland security, and have taken a
Fantastic.
lot of certifications in FEMA certs, um, CSTI certs out here as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just keep continuing that education side of it.
And so we just right before we hopped on the call, we were chatting about how you've just gone through National Preparedness Month in September, and we chatted a little bit about some of the things that you put together for your Safety and Preparedness Fair. Did I get the name right?
Yes, yes, you did.
Yes. Um, and for someone who lives in Ontario in Canada, we do that type of thing as well. We have Emergency Preparedness Week, that is a national week where we are all encouraged to involve the public in personal preparedness and understanding their own individual roles, as well as what we do in government to help them during an emergency. And there's some very clear differences between how we run those events, here in Canada and what you're telling me. So I heard you had a really great turnout for your event.
We did,
And
yes.
and how many people is that when we talk about a great turnout?
Yeah, so our event normally lasts about 4 hours during the day, and we had over 300 people show up. So we had a lot of great events, and we definitely tried to focus this year's event on, having a family fun event. So we brought in a lot of activities. We brought in an earthquake simulator. We have a fire extinguisher prop, so you can actually learn to use a fire
Mm-hmm.
extinguisher and put out a real fire. We had a bicycle and safety rodeo come in, teaching about bicycle safety. We
Which is
had
so
emergency
cool.
responders come in. We had touch a truck. So we had fire trucks, sheriff's department vehicles, CHP vehicles. We also had emergency preparedness vendors here, selling emergency
Mm-hmm.
products, services, things like that. So it was a really great event. It's definitely informative. We try to bring all that public safety aspect to it, and definitely just provide as much information as possible to the community, because the more that they're prepared, the better off they're going to be when if there's an incident.
Totally agree. And I always love the face to face with the public. It is one of the most rewarding parts of the job, I think.
Definitely.
Um, And you mentioned an earthquake simulator, which so I don't live in an earthquake prone zone. I'm more prone to snowstorms than earthquakes where I am. And so that is something I've never seen. I never have experienced. So for the listeners who, like me, don't live in an earthquake preparedness area, tell me what that is.
Yeah, so they bring in a large trailer, kind of looks like a trailer,
Yep.
and it simulates a large scale earthquake. So you're able to go into the trailer, they have seats in there, you sit down, hold on, and then it just shakes the trailer, simulating that large earthquake. And it teaches the importance of being prepared, making sure all, your items in your home are secured down so they don't fall over. But it's really important information. Out here in California, we are so prone to earthquakes.
Hmm.
We actually had one about almost a month ago now, and it was a decent size. Definitely you could feel the shaking.
Yeah.
But it's definitely important out here, and so we really tried to bring that information to the public, and the importance of it.
I love that. And I said to you that I'm coming next year for your safety and preparedness fair so I can experience that because for someone who can't imagine it, or someone who's new to the area, and especially for the youngsters, it is super cool to be able to experience that to help you in your preparedness. And the fact that you engaged and had so many opportunities for little people, whether that was your, did you call it a bike rodeo? Is that what you
Yeah,
called it?
it is. It's a bicycle and safety rodeo. So there's an organization out here. It's a nonprofit organization, and they actually bring out bicycles, scooters, helmets, all that. And they set up kind of like it looks like a little town. And these kids are able to, ride the bicycle through the town, and they teach them about bicycle safety. All the different laws out there and the importance of bicycle safety. So
Hmm.
a lot of great events, little activities, and it's fun for all ages. So it ended up being a great event this year. This was our sixth annual event. So and next year we're gonna have another one. So definitely excited. My goal is to keep expanding on it. I want to make it bigger. I
Hmm.
want to bring more vendors in. I want to get the information out there, and that's the importance behind the event. So.
And I think that is amazing. And I also want to say that you've really, I know that you're a mom, so you really have focused in on with your team the fact that bringing in all members of the family is important. And the things that you're doing that are hands-on for the kids, we know from being kids and also having kids that that really is sort of the future of preparedness and response and engagement. So somewhere in those 300 folks, there's folks that are now little people that are now inspired and saying, wow, I want to be a preparedness person, or I want to be a first responder, or they got up in the truck and thought, this is so cool. I'm going to do this one day. And I think that's a part of the job that we don't think about when we're organizing, these EM events or public safety events. We don't often think about how much that probably inspires the little people. And like yourself, who, you had that ingrained growing up through your lifetime, some of these folks will, little kids will be inspired. And come back next year, and then when they're preteens, say, how do I become somebody like you? So that face-to-face interface, I think, is just as important in inspiring in the future generations as the information that is helping them in your community. It's almost like a job fair, but the little kids are the are
Yeah.
are the ones that we're trying to inspire, not just provide information, but really
Yeah.
start them thinking. And I think it's very cool that your dream is to just continue to grow. And there's something else you said there, which we have, in the community that I live in, there's certainly a lot of folks that come out to support, but you said you do have a lot of NGOs and volunteers that are part of your EM support portfolio, and that they love to participate in this event.
Yeah, we like to bring organizations, vendors, um, into this event. We had actually American Red Cross participate, and then we have here in Malibu, we have a large um, a lot of volunteer groups, and they're all very large. So we have our community emergency response team, we have volunteers on patrol, we have arson watch, we have disaster communication services. So, and these are all volunteer groups. So they come, they set up booths here, and they provide their information. Whether it's on classes, what their team does, their volunteer group does. So we definitely like to bring in all organizations and vendors and agencies. And I think bringing everyone together too, it also, uh, it we're here to help the community, at the end of the day, and us being here providing that information all together, I think reinforces that as well, and we're, again, like you said, we're able to sit and talk to the community, answer questions, and we're also, like you said, with the having all the kids participating in it as
Mm-hmm.
well. My son actually was at the event, and he got to, he sat in the earthquake simulator. He now knows how to
Mm-hmm.
use a fire extinguisher, put
Oh,
out a
I love it.
fire. So, we definitely wanted to make this a family event, but also get that information out there of the importance of being prepared.
Your dad must like that.
Yeah, my dad, I think, is very proud. So, yeah, he actually attended the event as well. So,
Of
I'm here where I'm at because of the support of my dad and my parents, and so he, I think, especially because this was a role that he sat in the EOC for many years during a lot of different incidents. So, now seeing, I think, me, his only daughter, kind of go into that path as well, I think he's definitely proud. So he's a proud dad.
super,
So
yeah, proud dad moment. And then 3 generations at this event that you were coordinating. It's pretty cool.
yeah.
So congrats on a successful event. And then when I asked you, are things busy or slow? Like every emergency manager across North America and probably the globe, you said, oh, no, really busy because
Yeah.
you're moving right into your fire season there. So
Yes. Yes.
right into
So
planning and preparedness mode.
yep, it's definitely, once you're in emergency management, it's definitely nonstop. So, yeah, we're going into to getting ready for fire season. So that's normally, between October going into the end of November. We have Santa Ana winds out here, the
Hmm.
heat. So we're preparing, we're working and communicating with our, emergency response agencies, and on a citywide, we are just making sure we are ready. Our EOC is ready. um, so it's definitely nonstop, definitely busy, but it's part of the job.
It's part of the job. It's the exciting part of the job, right? There's
Oh,
never a boring day.
100%.
And it changes in an instant. I was chatting with another woman in EM this morning, and she said, the thing that she looks for in a successful team is their ability to pivot in an instant. One phone call or one text message can change what you had planned for your team for the day. So, she said they're really good at then refocusing after they've dealt with whatever the issue of the day is. And I said,
Yeah.
that really requires a very cohesive team, right?
Hmm.
And the ability to understand that any one person needs some general knowledge of the portfolios of everyone on the team, because at any moment you may be supporting each other, and that's very
Yeah.
different than some other environments, including the one you came from. That you're not, everyone is a generalist, though some of us have expertise in various areas in our portfolios. It really is pivot in an instant. And what I'm hearing is that's no different for your team there.
Yeah, no, I think, in this field, you definitely have to be able to adapt. Whether it's in the middle of an incident or whether it's the beginning of an incident, you have to be able to make that quick change, assess that situation and then move forward from there. So that's definitely something that, it's part of emergency management.
Hmm.
And like you said, it's always different. Like no incident's ever the same.
Yeah.
So there's always something new, and you just have to be ready for that.
Now, Sarah, I've asked some of my other guests sort of what is their favorite part of the portfolios that they work on. And everybody sort of has a different answer. Some people are, well, I like an activation, whether it's for a planned event or a real incident that's happening within their community. They really thrive on the action of an activation. Other folks, very much like the planning and preparedness side or the community education side. And then there's the training and exercises. So why don't you tell us what so far you think are the portfolios or the areas that really inspire you the most? Because I heard through the grapevine that you're sort of a really diligent worker, nonstop EM person with a lot of passion. So what are the areas that you love the most right now, knowing that they change as we as we grow and as we deal with different incidences and have different opportunities? Obviously they grow, but where are you right now in terms of the things that really get you excited?
I have to say, I definitely like the training and the exercise. So
Hmm.
I do a lot of training here with our city staff. We also conduct a lot of and offer a lot of training to the public. We actually just finished one last night. We offered a fire extinguisher training for the public. But I like doing those classes, and I definitely like when you're able to sit in a class, get the information, and then take that information and utilize those skills in a exercise. I think having a hands-on exercise and you're able to really understand the process of an EOC, and you're able to kind of assess and test what everything that you just learned. So, and it's actually funny because I'm not I'm not a very I don't like to public speak.
We
And
talked about
so
that before, and I said, well, that's interesting because your favorite thing to do is training and exercises, which
yeah.
is very much being front and center.
Yes, and it's funny because I feel like once I got into this field too, and a lot of my job duties kind of shifted, and I did a lot of training and exercises. I just kind of, you definitely get used to it the more you do it. But I actually enjoy it. I love being able to teach new things, and whether it's our new EOC software system that we, just finished up, or, putting all that information to use in an exercise. And, especially when it's like a scenario-based exercise and you're giving the staff this entire scenario and seeing how they respond to it, get that information into the EOC. So I definitely like that side to it. But, again, I like, working in the activations as well. I do really well under, I guess, under
Under
pressure,
pressure.
and being able to just focus on that task and get it done. Um, I think there's so many different components to emergency management. Um, I think I like all of them, but
Yeah.
I have to say, like, probably the training and exercises. I think, it's just being able to share these new things with the staff or with the community, and then leaving knowing like they learned something.
They learned something.
Um,
Yeah. And I really like that too. So like you, I was not a public speaker in any way, shape, or form in my lifetime. In fact, I would do anything to avoid it in early in my career. And now in the last, I'd say 15 years or so, like you, I very much enjoy speaking to people. And I feel at the end of the day, if I go home from running a training session, for example, or facilitating an exercise, I feel like, hey, I saw the light bulb moment for a bunch of people today. And they went away with new information and they were really excited. And that is really in, invigorating. And so for a long time, I couldn't figure out, why do people want to be teachers? What is so great about being a teacher? And then I realized, they end most days knowing that they created an environment of learning for somebody, that it was a safe space, and that they saw light bulbs go on where people were like, oh, yeah, now this makes perfect sense. Or I
yeah.
could bring this back to my own department and revitalize the conversation around whatever their challenge is. And suddenly you start to feel a cohesive environment coming together. And so we would often do a quiz or a little exercise at the end of a training day, and to see people's reactions of their own learning and then their own success, whether you do, a quiz or a test or a training or an exercise down the line, being able to be there for the process is, what I'm hearing you say. And I totally agree. You saw them learn it. You saw them have a light bulb moment. In many cases, they take that back to wherever they came from, and increase the competence of their own teams and programs. And then when you do have an exercise, you're like, wow, look at, they're doing exactly what they were trained to do, like
Yeah.
clockwork.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I feel like, I see that, like you said, that light bulb, and they get this information and then they understand it and they again take it back to their team. But at the same time, it's also, I feel for, on my side as well, like I feel like it's that proud moment, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, what I just taught, they got it, it's a success, it works, and it's that proud moment of them, um, getting this information. And so, and leaving like understood it and it was good. So definitely, I think my favorite part of EM is just being able to teach new things and have it benefit people.
So, Sarah, let's talk a little bit about the strengths that you think that women bring to the field of emergency management. I know it's probably not top of your mind today because I pull you away from whatever you're doing. But I really do think that there are some significant strengths that we bring to the table. In the last decade, we have seen women really rise in the ranks of emergency management, but also even just feeling comfortable to think about this as a career path, to join the ranks of the NGOs and the government organizations and even the private sector, as we work with them towards more community resilience. And I think the strengths that women bring to the table are really unique. So, have you found that? Do you think about that in your day-to-day operations when you're putting together, training and exercises or a public event? Do you think about that? And what are some of those strengths that women bring to the field, do you think?
So I think this is a very important question. And I really thought about it from our previous discussions as well, like what women can truly bring to emergency management. And I go back to, I think women bring that, natural caring, nurturing, and empathetic side to emergency management. I think these traits can be really important, especially during kind of that recovery phase of an incident. The
Hmm.
people want to be heard. And I think this trait really allows emergency managers to relate and understand what the community is going through, their concerns, and or even just questions they might have. But I also think as well, like we also bring our ability to plan. And I think women are natural planners, and that's a huge
100%.
part of emergency management as well. And I mean, on a personal level, I plan everything I do in my day, not just during like work hours, but I think also in like my personal life. I plan,
Right.
okay, I got to go to the market, I got to do laundry or whatever it may be, but I plan. And I think, um, that's a huge part of emergency management. And the ability to plan really allows us to kind of look at that whole picture response in emergency management and also allows us to develop those kind of contingency plans. It's always having a plan after plan after plan. Um, and I think those are all extremely important traits and strengths that women bring to emergency management. I think overall, I think women can bring a lot to this field and really in all aspects of emergency management.
I agree 100%. And I'll maybe add to what you said to say that if you have a plan, then you have the ability to flex within that plan. So really nothing is catching you off guard if you have taken this 360 approach to, viewing the current situation and, potentially how you're going to recover. Then you have flex within that plan and you're not starting from scratch. So I agree, that's definitely a strength that we have. And you know, pretty much 365, 24/7.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like planning's just, I mean, for me, like I said, on a personal level, I plan
Hmm.
just my everyday, things that I have to get done, but also everything in my work, I plan to a T, whether it's meetings or, documents, plans that have to get completed. That's just who I am naturally. And I think, those are all huge strengths. And I think it really helps in that field.
So I heard you say that you also like an EOC activation. And who
Yes.
amongst us does not? But we have, and I also know that you're a mom. And so we have some particular, challenges around that because, and we can say that it's not true, but it's true. There are, challenges around the role of motherhood and fatherhood, but really, around the role of ensuring that, our kids understand what we're doing and the pressures around the job that we may have, that we may not be available all the time. And so I know that you come from an emergency response family, so that was second nature to you growing up. How are you carrying that tradition on so that your son understands some of the challenges associated with your work? Because it really isn't 9 to 5. It could be anytime, any day, whether that's Christmas or the 4th of July.
Yeah. And it definitely comes with the job, but I try to talk to my son and I let him know what my job is, what I do. And he's 12, so he definitely, he
He gets
understands it
Yep.
and he knows what it can come with. But I also have a huge support system. My parents, my dad was in this and he in this field, so he understands it. But they have been such huge supports for me throughout the years and my family. So, definitely have a plan in place in the event like we do have to activate and I do get pulled away. I have it all in place of, my parents do help me out. But it's being able to talk to my son and have him understand what I do and what this job comes with. But I think he attended our event not too long ago, our
Yep.
safety and preparedness fair. I think he was very proud of me as well because he had a lot of fun. So,
I
but it
love that.
gave him an understanding of all the different people that I work with, and so it was kind of a good way for him to see, and also learn things at the event as well. But I always try and, we always talk to him and let him know, especially going into our fire season out here, that, I may get called to work. But he's definitely old enough that he understands. And, I have such a great support system at home that it definitely helps working in this position. And so
100%. So sticking with sort of the family theme that we were talking about here, and it's amazing that you have such a great support system. And I even think for myself, it went beyond family to friends who, if they would see the news and understand that that incident was something that the EOC would be activating for in my city, they would reach out by text and say, do you need me to pick up your daughter today? And so it's like the more you share with your community about how you're supporting the community in your work and the things that you do, they want to support you in that. And so, the support structures that we bring to the table to help us do our work, I think are really important. And knowing that you said, your dad was really your first mentor, has mentorship been important to you as you have, gone through the phases of your career? And do you think that's important for women in emergency management?
definitely, I think mentorship is important in any career field. I work with the city of Malibu, and prior to that, I actually worked with the city of LA, and both agencies I had such great mentors. Here at Malibu, actually, the director of public safety, Susan Duenas, she has been such a great mentor, because I haven't been in this field long. And I'm still learning as I go. And I think, she's kind of taken me under her wing and to say,
I love
and
that.
she has pushed me out of my box and, but she's also there to support. And she's, if I do have questions, she's always been there to help me through it. So I think mentorship's really important because I think in any career field, when you start out something new, it's always going to be a learning experience. Even if you have that educational background, you don't really learn in this field until you're in it, until you sit in those EOC activations, until,
Exactly.
All of that's coming in. And I think mentorship, when you have that great mentor, it really helps guide you. And you learn new things and you're able to take that and move it forward and then provide mentorship, down the road. And I think it's just so important.
And you're going to pay it forward.
100%. I think it's so great and just to have that mentor.
So my last question to you, Sarah, is one that I ask everyone. And I actually think it is really important because, we're all on social media every day. And, it's always about take time for yourself, make sure that you have, your own personal resilience, and how do you deal with life stressors. And I think the folks that are in first response organizations and the volunteers that I'm thinking about right now, on the East Coast, who are dealing with the aftermath of the hurricane, you know, there are times that we really flourish in response and we give it our all 100%. How do you refill your own bucket? You know, how do you make sure that you're getting the recovery time that you need? Are there activities that you know, whether that's journaling or yoga or whatever that may be, have you come to something that brings you a little bit of peace and helps you fill your bucket again so that you're ready to go?
Yeah, and I think this field it can definitely be a stressful one.
Yeah.
I think we work so hard to prepare, and then when you are faced with these disasters and you see all the damage that it caused, it can be very hard. And so for me, like I have to, once I leave the EOC, I have to fully just disconnect from it. And then I go home and I spend time with my son.
Yeah, so being a mom actually is the perfect refocuser, right? You can easily
Okay.
shut your mind off to the events of the day when you see your little people, regardless of their age. My little person is 15 now, but as soon as I get home, I can easily refocus on her. Now, that being said, Sarah, that is a way of filling your bucket, but how do you do anything for yourself that helps you either reinvigorate or reengage, just something that helps you revitalize yourself?
Yeah, on a personal side, I honestly just like to go home and sometimes just watch Netflix. And I have a lot of favorite shows. And
Yeah.
sometimes just going home and getting into my show and decompressing is what I do for me. And that just kind of, I'm able to relax and then the next day start fresh and move into whatever that day has I have to face that day. So
I
that's
love
something
that.
I like.
You're not alone in that. So many of us just want to put on our comfy clothes and disconnect so that,
Yeah.
you know, our brain is recharging. We're having a little bit of the warm fuzzies or the chills or whatever it is that excites us, but just time to decompress. So I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah, and I think
And
it's good sometimes just to go home and relax, lay down on the
yes,
couch, watch your TV show, maybe eat some ice cream.
yep.
So it's just, that's just what I like to do, and that helps me get through things. So
Thank you for sharing that because I think as women, we have a hard time, especially in this field. We are a lot of type A personalities who like to be on the go, but admitting to all of ourselves and the world that everybody needs a little downtime so that our bucket is full and we can start the new day fresh. I think it's important to admit that we do that. And so thank you for sharing that. And there's one last question I want to ask you because you really did sort of a full-on career swap
I did, yes.
during a pandemic.
Yeah.
So that came with its own challenges. But for the women out there who are listening and are looking for a career change or looking for that thing that tells them that this is the right way to go, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, I think for me at least, making this career switch, honestly, I went back and forth on it. I worked really
Hmm.
hard to get to the career that I was at prior to this. I did all the schooling for that and I loved it, but
Hmm.
I made this jump and I made this switch into emergency management. And honestly, it was the best decision I have ever made when it comes to my career. I love what I do. And, I've always heard that phrase, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And,
Hmm.
you know, I never really, I don't want to say I never understood it, but I guess, for me, it was always okay, and it really hit me, I guess, when I went into this field because I truly love what I do. I want to help people. I want to help the community. I want to help them prepare. I want them, to know that we are here to help in that response and that recovery phase. And so I made this switch, and sometimes you just have to make that jump, and could be very scary and hard. And for me, it was,
Hmm.
but I did, and I don't look back. So I definitely think this is where I'm supposed to be, working in this field, and I absolutely love it. So sometimes you just gotta just roll with it, and
The
just
leap
keep
of faith,
going.
just
Yes,
take it. So
just
if
gotta
any of our
go.
listeners are on the fence, take the leap. And Sarah, can I include your contact information in the show notes if anything you said really resonated with somebody or they have any questions about your very cool safety and preparedness fair? Are you open to them reaching out to you?
Yes, definitely.
Amazing. So we will ensure that we put your email in our show notes. And I want to thank you so much, Sarah, for spending time with me this afternoon. For me, it's the end of the day. For you, it's the middle of the day. But I can't thank you enough for your time. I'm so excited to watch you throughout your career. And I have heard amazing and tremendous things about your training. So all I can say is thank you for the contributions you're making to emergency management. I am proud to know you, and I'm excited to meet you in person one of these days.
Thank you. And you know what? Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's so important to highlight the success of women out there. So this is so fantastic what you guys have put together. So again, thank you so much for having me. It was so great talking to you.
So, Sarah, with your permission, what I would say is here at Resilient Heroes, knowing that you have been in wildfire response mode for months on end now, and that you're, moving out of recovery mode, I'm wondering if you would be open to coming back and talking to our listeners about some of the lessons learned from those months of activation.
Yeah, I would love to come back and join the podcast again as well. I would like to bring in our public safety director here, Susan Duenas, with the city of Malibu. I think that would be great, and we can kind of maybe do a panel podcast, and we can talk about our overall response, preparation efforts, planning efforts, things like that. So if you'd be interested in that, I think we'd love to participate.
I think that would be an amazing episode, a fantastic partnership between the two of you to really bring your experience and share with us all what that has been like for your team. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much, Laura.
The opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Buffalo Computer Graphics. All content is for informational purposes only. Are you or someone you know a resilient hero and would be interested in contributing to our podcast? We would love to hear from you. Please contact us at RHpodcast@buffalocomputergraphics.com.